Today, we uncover the shocking truth about UK milk in 2026. Because here's something you've probably never stopped to think about. Milk is the first thing most of us were ever fed. It's the stuff our mothers gave us, the stuff we pour on our cereal every morning, the stuff we splash into our tea without a second thought, the stuff we were told our whole lives was the most natural, wholesome, simple food on earth. A glass of milk, 3 ingredients: cow, grass, bucket. What could possibly go wrong? But here's the uncomfortable truth nobody tells you while you're standing in the supermarket chiller aisle staring at 47 identical-looking plastic bottles. Not all milk is the same. In fact, some of the stuff sitting in those fridges bears almost no resemblance to the milk your grandparents collected from the farm. And when you actually look past the brand name, the herd of cows on the label, the green fields on the carton, and read what's really going on behind the scenes, some of the most trusted names in British dairy reveal a story that, frankly, left me genuinely unsettled. There's a famously filtered brand sitting in kitchens all over Britain, the one with the cute advert and the longer shelf life, whose production process has become so controversial there was an actual national boycott attempt against it in 2024. There's a bottle that looks like it came from a small family farm in the English countryside, but is actually produced by the biggest dairy cooperative in Europe, less than a mile from the factory that makes the cheapest own-brand bottle on the shelf. There's a fresh milk brand owned by a German billion-euro conglomerate that now supplies roughly 30% of all the fresh milk in Britain, while its farmers are paid so little they're going out of business. There's a French multinational, the world's largest dairy company, quietly owning the rights to what you think is an independent heritage brand. There's a milk delivery service you remember from your childhood, the one with the glass bottles on the doorstep, now owned by a company that almost collapsed before being rescued by an independent processor. There's an organic brand whose milk isn't actually produced by the family on the logo anymore, and hasn't been since 2018. There's a lactose-free milk that's fine on the face of it, but raises a genuine question about whether we should be drinking milk that's been fundamentally broken down by an engineered enzyme. And before we even touch the first bottle, there's something we need to get straight, because this is where almost everybody gets tricked. Milk in its natural state is one of the simplest and most remarkable foods on the planet. Whole milk from a pasture-raised cow contains protein, calcium, B vitamins, iodine, phosphorus, and potassium, all in a package that your body evolved to digest over thousands of years. Pasteurization, gentle heating to kill harmful bacteria, has been around since the 1920s and is broadly accepted as a necessary safety step. Homogenization, breaking down the fat globules so the cream doesn't rise to the top, is also standard. But what's happened in the last 20 years, and especially in the last 10, is that the industry has quietly pushed far beyond those basic steps into a world of microfiltration, ceramic filtration, ultra-high temperature flash heating, protein concentration, and milk manipulation techniques that would make your grandmother's head spin. And because it still lands in a plastic bottle with a cow on it and the word milk printed on the front, your brain never thinks to question it. We question what's in a ready meal, we question the ingredients in a biscuit, we question the sugar in a soft drink. But milk is sacred, milk is safe, milk is just milk. And that's exactly why the industry has got away with so much, because they know you don't read a milk bottle like you read a food label. You don't stand in the chiller aisle comparing processing methods. You see a familiar brand, a green pasture, a farmer smiling, and your brain fills in the rest. It assumes pure. It assumes natural. It assumes this is the same stuff your mum poured on your cornflakes in 1985. But it isn't. The modern UK milk aisle has become a carefully engineered landscape of processing tricks, multinational ownership, and farm gate prices so low that the people actually milking the cows can barely afford to keep them. And none of that shows up on the front of the bottle. So, we've gone through the major milk brands currently sold in UK supermarkets and delivered to British doorsteps, and we're going to expose the 8 milks you really need to think twice about. Then I'll tell you the handful that are genuinely still worth buying. But, before we start, do me one favor. If you believe ordinary British families deserve honest answers about what's actually in the most basic food in their fridge, then hit that hype button for me right now and give this video a like while you're at it. I know it sounds like a small thing. It really isn't. Every single hype shoves this video in front of thousands more ordinary people who still think milk is milk. And the louder this gets, the harder it becomes for these companies to keep quietly processing the truth out of our food, while the marketing on the front tells a completely different story. This is how we push back. This is how standards actually get raised. So, hype it, like it, and let's make some proper noise together. And once you've done that, leave me a comment, because I honestly want to know what's sitting in your fridge right now. And if you're new here, subscribe, because I keep making videos exactly like this one, pulling apart the everyday products you've been told your whole life to trust. And let's get into it. Number 8. Lacto-free by Arla. Now, let me start with the fair bit. Lacto-free is a genuine lifesaver for people who are lactose intolerant but want to keep drinking cow's milk. About 68% of the world's population has some degree of lactose malabsorption, and for those people, lactase-treated milk is an absolute godsend. I want to be really clear about that. This isn't about telling anyone to stop buying a product that helps them digest dairy comfortably. The issue is what lactase does. Lactase is an enzyme that breaks down lactose, the natural sugar in milk, into glucose and galactose. That means lactose-free milk is essentially pre-digested. The sugar has already been split apart, which changes the nutritional profile slightly and, more importantly, makes the milk taste noticeably sweeter than regular milk, because glucose is sweeter than lactose. And here's the question that rarely gets asked. Are we now at a point where a significant number of people who are not actually lactose intolerant are buying lactase-treated milk simply because it tastes sweeter and lasts longer, treating a medical adaptation as a lifestyle upgrade? Lacto-free is produced by Arla, the same Danish-Swedish dairy cooperative that produces Cravendale. It's microfiltered and UHT-treated, giving it an unopened shelf life of months rather than days. And there is a genuine debate in the nutrition science community about whether habitual consumption of pre-digested dairy, with its altered sugar profile, is something we should all be drinking casually. One commenter put it simply, "I bought Lacto-free by accident. It was so sweet I couldn't finish the cereal." If you genuinely need it, absolutely buy it. But if you're buying it for the shelf life or the sweetness, you might be paying a premium for a product your body was never designed to need. Number 7. Müller branded fresh milk. This one is about ownership, not ingredients, because the fresh milk itself is perfectly standard. Pasteurized, homogenized, nothing added beyond the basic process. But who's behind it matters, and here's why. Müller UK, which operates as Müller Milk and Ingredients, is the single biggest supplier of fresh milk in Britain. They produce roughly 30% of all the fresh milk on UK shelves, supplying Tesco, Sainsbury's, Lidl, and a host of others with their own brand milk, while also selling under the Müller name. The company was originally Robert Wiseman Dairies, a Scottish family business founded in 1947, built over decades into one of the most respected dairy names in Britain. In 2012, the German conglomerate Unternehmensgruppe Theo Müller bought it for £280 million and rebranded it. That's the same Müller that makes yogurts, the same Müller that produces Frege milkshakes, and since the acquisition, the company has been involved in one of the most persistent controversies in UK dairy: the price Müller pays its farmers. In 2023, Müller cut its Farmgate milk price repeatedly, dropping it to around 28 pence per litre, at a time when farmers said they needed at least 35 pence to break even. Farmers protested. The NFU got involved, and the result was that dozens of British dairy farms closed their doors, unable to survive on what the biggest milk buyer in the country was willing to pay. The company defended the cuts by pointing to falling global dairy prices and retailer pressure, and there's some truth in that. Supermarkets squeeze the processors squeeze the farmers, and eventually it's the cows and the families who milk them that pay the price. But here's the reality. When you buy the cheapest own-brand 4-pinter in Tesco or Lidl, there's a very good chance that milk came from a Müller processing plant, and the farmer who produced it took home less than the cost of production. This isn't about the milk itself being bad. It's about a system where the dominant player in the market has used its size to drive prices so low that the people actually producing the food can't make a living. And that, in my book, is worth knowing. Number 6. The in-store supermarket microfiltered premium brands. Tesco's filtered milk, Sainsbury's filtered, Asda's extra filtered, every supermarket's version of longer life fresh milk. These are the bottles that sit right next to the standard ones, cost about 20 to 30 pence more, and promise a fresher, creamier taste that lasts. And they do last longer. Microfiltration uses a ceramic or polymer membrane with pores so fine they physically strain out bacteria, yeasts, and spores without the heat of pasteurization. It's clever technology. The question is whether it's actually necessary. The typical pasteurized 4-pinter already lasts 7 to 10 days in the fridge. The microfiltered version might stretch that to 14 or even 21 days unopened. But here's the thing. That extended shelf life doesn't come from any natural property of the milk. It comes from an industrial process that removes not just the bad bacteria, but also, according to some critics, some of the beneficial microorganisms and enzymes that make fresh milk what it is. And the cost is not insignificant. A 4-pint bottle of Tesco filtered whole milk, for example, costs around £1.85, while the standard Tesco whole milk costs about £1.45. That's roughly 25% more for milk that has been mechanically stripped of more of its natural complexity. Again, it's not dangerous, it's not bad milk, but you are paying a premium for a process that solves a problem you probably didn't have. Your standard fresh milk, properly refrigerated, lasts more than a week. If you're drinking it slower than that, the answer might not be a more processed bottle. It might be buying smaller quantities. Number 5. Arla Cravendale filtered milk. And here we come to the most controversial milk brand in Britain right now. Cravendale is Arla's flagship filtered milk, and it's been sitting in British fridges since the 1990s. It's the one with the famous "It's not milk" advert from the 2000s, which the Advertising Standards Authority investigated because people complained it was misleading. The ASA concluded that consumers understood it as a joke, but the fact that it was even investigated tells you something about how carefully this brand dances around the word milk. Cravendale's claim to fame is its ceramic filtration process, which it calls pure filtration. It passes the milk through ceramic membranes with microscopic pores, removing more bacteria than standard pasteurization, extending the shelf life to up to 3 weeks unopened. On the surface, that sounds like pure innovation. Cleaner milk, longer life, what's not to love? But in late 2024, Arla became the center of a national firestorm when it announced a trial of a methane-reducing feed additive called Bovaer on some of the farms supplying its milk. Bovaer is a feed supplement developed by Royal DSM that suppresses the enzymes in a cow's stomach that produce methane. It's been approved by the Food Standards Agency and the European Food Safety Authority as safe, and the science says it significantly reduces methane emissions, which is genuinely important for the climate. But the rollout was catastrophic. Social media exploded with calls to boycott Arla products, including Cravendale, over baseless conspiracy theories about the additive's safety. Arla's own statement described the boycott calls as based on misinformation. The trial involved a small number of farms, the additive is thoroughly tested, and the FSA has confirmed there are no safety concerns. All of that is true. But here's why I'm including it. The controversy itself is the story. Because it exposed something the industry would rather you didn't think about. The milk you're drinking has become so heavily engineered and processed that when a new synthetic feed additive enters the supply chain, nobody can tell which bottle came from a Bovaer-fed cow and which didn't. The traceability, the transparency, the connection between a specific farm and a specific bottle has been engineered out of the system. And that's the real issue with Cravendale. Not the Bovaer itself, which is about cow feed, not the milk. But the fact that a national brand like this has become so centralized, so processed, and so removed from the farm it pictures on the label, that a feed additive controversy can engulf the entire brand without the consumer having any way of knowing which farms were involved. The front sells you a happy cow. The back should probably say, produced in a factory, supplied by Europe's biggest dairy cooperative, sourced from thousands of anonymized farms, and filtered through a ceramic membrane you've never heard of. Reputation is a memory. The supply chain is the current account. Number 4. Yeo Valley Organic Fresh Milk. And this one genuinely annoys me. One commenter said it better than I could. I buy Yeo Valley because I thought I was supporting a Somerset family farm. Turns out I was supporting Arla. I might as well buy Cravendale and save a quid. That's the whole deception in a single sentence. Because Yeo Valley is one of the most beloved brand names in British organic food. The family on the logo, the beautiful Somerset Valley, the cows grazing in the sunshine, the whole independent family farm feel. And for yogurts, for their desserts, for their ice cream, that independent family ownership is real. Yeo Valley Production, the company that makes the yogurts and desserts, is genuinely owned by the Mead family and its employees. It's a beautiful story, but Yeo Valley Organic Fresh Milk, the cartons you see in Tesco and Sainsbury's labeled Yeo Valley Organic, those are not produced by the Mead family. In 2018, Arla Foods UK acquired the rights to pack and sell fresh milk, butter, and cheese under the Yeo Valley Organic brand. So the milk inside that carton, the one with the organic certification and the pastoral scene, is actually supplied by Arla. The same Arla that produces Cravendale, the same Arla at the center of the Bovaer controversy, the same Arla that is a Danish-Swedish multinational cooperative with thousands of farmer members across Europe. Your Yeo Valley organic milk is not coming from a small family farm in Somerset. It's coming from the same industrial supply chain that fills the Cravendale bottles and the Arla-branded cartons, and a significant chunk of the own-label organic milk on supermarket shelves. The brand on the front and the factory on the back are telling two completely different stories. And this isn't a secret, it's on the small print. But most people pick up that carton because they trust the name, because they want to support British family farming, because they want organic, and none of that is actually what they're getting. The front says Yeo Valley, the processing plant says Arla, and the beautiful independent story on the label belongs to a different company entirely. Number 3. The French-owned heritage brands. Lactalis, the French multinational dairy giant owned by the Besnier family, is the largest dairy company in the world. And in the UK, their footprint is bigger than most people realize. Lactalis owns the rights to some of the most familiar names in British dairy, including President, Galbani, and Leerdammer, and their UK arm, Lactalis UK and Ireland, operates a massive fresh milk processing business. You won't see the Lactalis name on the front of your milk bottle. It will be a supermarket-owned brand or a regional label that has been quietly acquired over the years. But what matters is the consolidation. 20 years ago, British milk was produced by hundreds of independent dairies, regional processors, family-owned creameries, each with their own name, their own farms, their own reputation. Today, the vast majority of that milk flows through just 3 or 4 multinational giants: Arla, Müller, Lactalis, and Saputo. That's it. 4 companies process the overwhelming majority of fresh milk in the UK. And when you buy milk, any of the big brand or own label bottles, your money is almost certainly going to one of those 4. The diversity, the local connection, the traceability has been replaced by centralized supply chains and shareholder returns. And the most infuriating part is that the packaging hasn't changed. The labels still show green fields, red barns, happy cows, and family names that haven't been accurate for decades. The front is a museum of a dairy industry that no longer exists. Number 2, the ultra-filtered and extended shelf-life milk category. And this isn't one brand, it's a trend. In the last few years, a new type of milk has started appearing on UK shelves. Milk that lasts not 7 days, not 3 weeks, but months. Ultra-filtered milk uses a combination of microfiltration and ultrafiltration to remove not just bacteria but also water, concentrating the protein and removing much of the lactose, while producing a milk that can be stored for several weeks or even months unopened. Some of these products, like the Fairlife brand, are imported or produced under license, and they're being marketed as a premium, high-protein, low-sugar alternative. And there's nothing inherently unsafe about them. But there's a growing body of commentary, including from some dairy scientists, questioning whether a product that has been mechanically processed, filtered, fortified, and altered to this degree should still be called milk in the same sense as the stuff that comes out of a cow. A study published in 2025 that examined supermarket products found that plant-based alternatives contained roughly twice as many additives as animal-based equivalents. But the worrying trend is that animal-based products, including milk, are starting to move in the same direction. More processing, more filtration, more engineering, all in the name of shelf life and marketing. And it works because the word milk on the front carries an emotional weight, a promise of naturalness and simplicity that the product inside no longer deserves. You're buying a memory of what milk used to be, packaged in a bottle that lasts 3 months. And that's not nostalgia, that's a warning. Number 1. And this is the most important thing in the entire video, because it ties everything together. The disappearance of the local dairy. The consolidation of British milk production. This is the entry that explains why every other entry exists. Because the real problem with UK milk in 2026 is not any single additive, any single processing step, or any single brand. It's the system itself. In 1990, the UK had over 30,000 dairy farmers. By 2025, that number had fallen below 8,000, and it's still dropping, by roughly 5 to 7% every year. The farms that remain are getting bigger, more intensive, more industrial, as the independent family dairy becomes an endangered species. The retail price of milk has stayed artificially low for decades, with the major supermarkets using 4-pinter milk as a loss leader to get you through the door, while the farmgate price has been forced down to a level that makes it impossible for small and medium farms to survive. Müller, Arla, and the other processors are caught between the supermarkets squeezing them on price and the farmers demanding a living wage. And it's the farmers who lose, every single time. The result is that the British milk industry, one of the most iconic, most loved, most trusted sectors of British food production, is being hollowed out from within. And the milk on the shelf, the stuff that looks the same as it always did, the stuff that still calls itself by the same old names, is now produced in a system that has lost 30,000 farmers in 35 years. The cow on the front is a photograph. The farmer on the label is a memory. And the milk inside the bottle has traveled through a supply chain so consolidated, so centralized, so far removed from the farm on the label, that you could be forgiven for wondering if the picture and the product have anything in common at all. The front says, "Fresh from the farm." The back says, "Processed in a multinational facility 200 miles from the farm you're thinking of," and we're all still buying it because the packaging has trained us not to ask. Which brings us, at long last, to what you should actually be reaching for instead. So, how do you find the good stuff? Honestly, it's simpler than you'd think, and it comes down to 3 things. First, who owns it? Second, how local is it? And third, has it been so heavily processed that calling it milk feels like a stretch? Because here's the good news. Real, proper, genuinely good milk still exists in Britain. You just have to look past the supermarket chiller aisle, or at least look past the big brands that dominate it. First, Graham's Family Dairy. This is a 3rd-generation Scottish family dairy, founded in 1939, and it remains genuinely independent. They're Scotland's largest independent dairy. They source from their own farms and local Scottish suppliers, and in 2025, their farm was named Scottish Dairy Farm of the Year. Their Jersey milk, from a herd of pedigree Jersey cows that were milked by state-of-the-art robots in a £4 million barn transformation, is genuinely outstanding. Non-homogenized available too, so you get the cream line at the top, the way it used to be. You can find Graham's in Tesco, Sainsbury's, and other supermarkets across the UK, though it's strongest in Scotland. The one catch, and I'll always tell you the catch, is availability. It's not everywhere yet, though they've been expanding. Second, find your local independent dairy. And I don't mean the supermarket own label with a green field on the carton. I mean the actual local processor, the one with 1 or 2 farms, the one whose milk you can trace back to a specific herd. In the southwest, there's Trewethen Dairy, a family business based in Cornwall, supplying their own Cornish milk. In the north, there's Acorn Dairy, an organic, pasture-fed operation in County Durham that delivers in glass bottles. In Yorkshire, there's Tenderflake, an old family dairy. In Wales, there's Callan Wen, an organic cooperative of Welsh farmers. And in Scotland, in addition to Graham's, there's Campbelltown Creamery, making proper Channel Island milk. You have to search for them. They won't be the cheapest option, but when you buy from one of these, you know exactly where your milk came from, you know the farmer was paid a fair price, and you know the processing is minimal. That's the whole thing in a single transaction. Third, doorstep delivery. Yes, it still exists. Milk and More, now owned by Freshways, an independent UK processor, delivers glass-bottled milk to your doorstep in most parts of England and Wales. Glass bottles, returnable, refillable, the old way. You can choose your farmer, you can choose your milk type, and the milk is typically less processed than the supermarket long-life stuff. It costs more, about £1.50 to £1.80 for a pint delivered, compared to about 70 pence for a supermarket pint. But you're paying for a system that keeps local dairies alive, reduces plastic waste, and delivers fresh milk in the morning. If you can afford the premium, doorstep delivery is the single best thing you can do for British dairy. Fourth, M&S Select Farms fresh milk. Now, among the supermarket options, M&S stands out. They operate their own dedicated supply chain through their Select Farms program, sourcing from a specific group of British farms with their own animal welfare standards and a commitment to pasture grazing. They aren't the cheapest, and they're still a massive retailer with all the associated consolidation, but of the big supermarket options, M&S is the one that has put the most visible effort into maintaining a link between the label and the farm. So, here's the whole thing in a single breath. The milk aisle has been quietly taken over by a handful of multinational giants, microfiltered, ultra-filtered, and processed so far beyond simple pasteurization that it barely resembles what your grandparents drank. The farmers who actually produce the milk are being squeezed out of business. The independent dairies that built British dairy are vanishing, and the beautiful farm on the front of the bottle is increasingly a photograph of a world that has already been sold. But the good stuff, the real stuff, is still there. You just have to look past the big names. You have to seek out the independent dairies. You have to be willing to pay a little more and choose a little differently. And you have to ask the question nobody wants you to ask. Who actually owns the milk I'm about to drink? None of this means you've got to empty your fridge and start a raw milk movement tomorrow. It just means you get to choose with your eyes wide open instead of letting the packaging choose for you. You don't need the 3-week shelf life. You don't need the ceramic filtration. And that beautiful countryside carton from a multinational cooperative is not the same as a bottle from a local dairy farm. If this video opened your eyes even a little, then hit that hype button one more time and smash that like, because that's the single easiest way to drag this in front of the people who still have no idea. Share it with someone who buys Cravendale thinking it's just longer-lasting fresh milk, and leave me a comment telling me which everyday product you want me to pull apart next, because you lot always come up with the good ones. And if there's an independent dairy near you that deserves a spotlight, put it in the comments too. Let's shine a light on the ones still doing it right. Until next time, read your labels, know your farmers, demand better, and protect your plate.